When I surprised my wife at work with lunch, I found her in a business meeting that looked anything but professional. She said it was just one dinner with him, so I made damn sure it was our last night together. What happened next destroyed not just our marriage, but his entire life. Some secrets are worth uncovering, and some revenge is worth every second of planning. Maybe if I'd paid attention to the small changes, I could have prevented what happened next. Maybe if I'd looked up from my mixing board more often, asked better questions, been less absorbed in other people's music. My name is Clayton Morse. I'm 41 years old, and I own Soundwave Studios in downtown Portland. It's not glamorous, mostly local bands recording demos, voiceover work for commercials, the occasional wedding video soundtrack. But it's mine, built from the ground up after I left my corporate job 8 years ago. Brielle used to love coming by the studio in the early days. She'd sit in the control room while I worked, sketching in her notepad or just watching me adjust levels. "You're in your element here," she'd say, and I believed her. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was in the studio by 6 a.m., prepping for a session with a folk duo called River's Edge. They'd been working on their debut EP for 3 months, and today we were laying down final vocal tracks. My phone buzzed around 10:30. A text from Brielle. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." Nothing unusual there. She'd been putting in long hours at the marketing firm lately, chasing a promotion to creative director. The folk duo finished their session around 3, and I spent the next few hours mixing their tracks. There's something therapeutic about balancing frequencies, finding the sweet spot where every instrument sits perfectly. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice the time until my stomach started growling. I decided to surprise Brielle with lunch. She'd been stressed about the promotion, barely eating, surviving on coffee and determination. There was this little Italian place near her office that she loved, authentic food, the kind that made their own mozzarella. The 40-minute drive to her office gave me time to think. We've been distant lately, like two radio stations slowly drifting out of sync. Not fighting, just existing in parallel. I told myself it was temporary, the natural ebb and flow of marriage. Her office building was one of those sleek glass towers downtown, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces. I'd only been there a handful of times, company parties, the occasional lunch date. Brielle preferred to keep her work life separate. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than usual. Maybe it was anticipation, or maybe something deeper, a nagging feeling I've been ignoring for weeks. The kind of intuition you get when a track sounds off, but you can't pinpoint which frequency is wrong. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into the familiar corporate landscape of gray carpets and motivational posters. The receptionist, Sarah, looked up with surprise. "Clayton, what brings you here?" Sarah asked, her voice a little too bright. "Thought I'd surprise my wife with lunch," I replied, holding up the bag. "Oh," Sarah said, and something flickered across her face. "She's in a meeting right now. Conference room B." I thanked her and headed down the hallway, following the sound of muffled voices. The conference room had glass walls, which meant I could see everything before I even got close. Brielle was leaning forward across the table, laughing at something the man opposite her was saying. Her hand rested on the surface, fingers almost touching his. The man was tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit that screamed creative director. He had confident posture that came from never being told no. As I watched, he reached across and brushed something off Brielle's shoulder, a gesture so casual it had to be practiced. I stood there for a full minute, sandwich bag growing heavy in my hand, watching my wife flirt with a stranger. The kind of electric energy that crackles between two people who want each other. Finally, I knocked on the glass door. They both looked up, and I watched Brielle's face transform. The bright smile faded, replaced by something guarded. "Clayton," Brielle said, standing up too quickly. "What are you doing here?" "Brought you lunch," I replied, holding up the bag. "Thought you might be hungry." The man stood up and extended his hand. "You must be the husband. I'm Zephyr Thorne, the new account director." Zephyr. Of course his name was Zephyr. "Clayton Morse," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, deliberate. "We were just wrapping up," Brielle said, but neither of them moved to leave. "Actually," Zephyr said, checking his watch, "we should probably continue this conversation over dinner. There's still a lot to discuss about the Henderson campaign." I watched my wife's face light up. "That's a great idea." There's this new place downtown. Perfect, Zephyr said. I'll pick you up at 7. Something cold settled in my stomach. Pick her up. Brielle shot me a look. It's just business, Clayton. It's just one dinner with him to discuss the project. Just one dinner with him. The words hit me like feedback through a bad amplifier. I stood there watching my wife make plans with another man, and something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't about business. This was about the end of everything I thought I knew. Sure, I said quietly. Just one dinner. But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't be just one dinner. And I knew that whatever happened tonight, it would be our last night as husband and wife in any way that mattered. Brielle must have heard something in my voice because she looked at me sharply. It's not what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. I lied. Just wondering why a business dinner requires him to pick you up. Zephyr stepped forward. Actually, I suggested we meet at the restaurant, but Brielle mentioned she's been having car trouble. News to me. Her car had been running fine yesterday. Right, I said. Car trouble. The silence stretched between us. Finally, Brielle cleared her throat. We should probably get back to work, she said. I nodded and set the sandwich bag on the conference table. Enjoy your lunch. Both of you. Walking back to the elevator, I felt like I was moving underwater. Everything looked the same, but the world had fundamentally changed. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I followed my own wife. Not because I wanted to catch her in the act, but because I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. Sometimes you have to witness the wreckage to accept that the building has fallen down. I parked across the street from Chez Laurent, the fancy French place downtown where apparently Zephyr had moved their business dinner. Through the restaurant's large windows, I could see them at a corner table, the kind reserved for couples celebrating anniversaries or closing important deals. There was nothing businesslike about their body language. Brielle was leaning in, hanging on his every word. She'd changed into that red dress, the one she wore on our first anniversary, and her hair was styled in loose waves that caught the candlelight. When he reached across to refill her wine glass, their hands lingered together longer than necessary. She threw her head back and laughed at something he said, the kind of genuine laughter I hadn't heard from her in months. I watched him lean forward and whisper something in her ear, watched her blush and bite her lower lip the way she used to do with me, watched him pay the check like a man who'd just closed the deal of his life. I sat there for 2 hours, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. When they finally left, Zephyr's hand was on the small of her back, guiding her to his car. Not the gesture of a business colleague, but of a man who'd already claimed ownership. I followed them to the Marriott downtown, watched them walk into the lobby together, close enough that their shoulders touched, watched the elevator doors close behind them, and saw Brielle laugh at something he said just before the doors shut. I didn't need to see any more. The picture was crystal clear. Instead of going home to an empty house, I drove to my studio. There's something about the familiar hum of equipment that helps me think. I sat on my mixing board, staring at the controls, and made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First to my lawyer, Tom Richards, who I'd used when setting up the business. The answer on the third ring sounded groggy but alert when I explained what I needed. Adultery changes everything in Oregon, he said, especially if we can document it properly. Then I called my accountant, Martha Stevens. Then my business partner, Dave, who handled the technical side of the studio. By midnight, I had a plan in motion, and all our joint bank accounts locked down pending legal review. If Brielle wanted to play games, I'd make sure I control the rules. Brielle came home at 2 a.m., trying to be quiet as she slipped through the front door. I was waiting in the living room, sitting in the dark like some kind of avenging angel. She tried to fix her hair and makeup, but I could see the telltale signs: smudged lipstick, wrinkled dress, that satisfied glow of a woman who'd gotten what she wanted. "Clayton," she called softly. "Are you awake?" I flicked on the lamp beside my chair. She jumped, guilt written all over her face. "How was your business dinner?" I asked, my voice steady as a metronome. "It was fine," she said, avoiding my eyes. "We cover a lot of ground on the Henderson project." "I'm sure you did." "At the Marriott." The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "What?" "I followed you, Brielle. Saw the whole romantic dinner. Watched you disappear into his hotel room together. So let's skip the part where you lie to my face and get straight to the truth." She straightened up, and I watched her transform from caught wife to attack mode. The same way she handled difficult clients: deny, deflect, counterattack. You followed me? What kind of psycho behavior is that? The kind that happens when your wife starts acting like a stranger, I said. How long has this been going on? There's nothing going on, she snapped. God, you're so paranoid. So what if we went to his hotel? We needed somewhere quiet to work on the presentation. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Work on the presentation. Right. That's why you needed wine, candlelight, and your anniversary dress. Her jaw tightened, and I could see her recalibrating her strategy. You know what your problem is, Clayton? You become boring. Predictable. You sit in that studio all day, playing with other people's music while your own life falls apart. My life was fine until you decided to start playing house with Zephyr. His name is Zephyr, and he treats me like a woman, not like some roommate who happens to share a bed. The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my voice level. So this is my fault. You stopped seeing me months ago, she said, her voice rising. When's the last time you planned a surprise? When's the last time you made me feel special? Zephyr makes me feel alive again. Zephyr makes you feel like a cheater. I'm not cheating, she screamed. We haven't even, it's not physical. Yet. The word hung between us like a verdict. She stared at me, and I could see the exact moment she stopped pretending. Maybe it should be, she said quietly. Maybe I deserve someone who appreciates what he has. I stood up slowly, feeling strangely calm. You know what? You're right. You do deserve that. And I deserve better than a wife who's shopping for my replacement. What's that supposed to mean? It means pack your things. Find somewhere else to sleep tonight. The joint accounts are frozen as of an hour ago, so you better hope Zephyr's feeling generous. Her eyes widened in shock and fury. You can't do that. Already did. Watch me. Brielle left that night, but she wasn't gone for good. 2 days later, she came back with a new attitude. Not apologetic, but vindictive. She walked into our house like she owned the place, wearing clothes I'd never seen before and a smirk that made my blood boil. We need to talk, she announced, dropping her designer purse on the kitchen counter. About what? Your new career as Zephyr's side piece. She laughed, cold and sharp. Actually, yes. Since you want to play hardball with the bank accounts, I thought you should know exactly what you're giving up. What followed was the most humiliating 10 minutes of my life. She described her night with Zephyr in graphic detail. How he made her feel, what he did to her, how he appreciated her body in ways I apparently never had. Every word was calculated to wound, delivered with surgical precision. He knows how to touch a woman, she said, watching my face for a reaction. He doesn't just go through the motions like some people. I sat there and took it, letting her think she was winning. But while she was busy trying to destroy my self-esteem, I was thinking about the envelope sitting in my desk drawer upstairs, the one my private investigator had delivered that morning. When she finished her performance, I stood up slowly. Feel better now? Actually, yes. Good. Because I have something for you too. I walked to my desk and retrieved the envelope, then spread the contents across the kitchen table. Photos of her and Zephyr entering the hotel. Bank records showing unusual spending patterns over the past 3 months. Phone records. A detailed timeline of their affair. Her face went white as she realized what she was looking at. Turns out Zephyr has a wife, I said conversationally. Jennifer. Sweet woman. 2 kids, Tommy, age 8, and Sarah, age 6. I had lunch with her yesterday. Brielle's hand started shaking. You didn't. Oh, I did. Showed her everything. She was very grateful for the information. Apparently, she'd been suspicious for months, but couldn't prove anything. She's filing for divorce this afternoon. You son of a... I also had an interesting conversation with human resources at your company. Seems like office affairs violate their code of conduct policy. Something about creating a hostile work environment. I watched the blood drain from her face as the implications hit her. They can't fire me for this. No, but they can fire Zephyr. Which they did. This morning. Effective immediately. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Finally, she found her voice. You destroyed his life. No, I said quietly. You both did that when you decided to blow up 2 marriages for a cheap thrill. The phone rang an hour after Brielle left, and I wasn't surprised to see Jennifer Thorne's name on the caller ID. Zephyr's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, had been calling me daily since our lunch meeting, comparing notes and building our respective cases. Clayton, Jennifer said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. I wanted to thank you again. My lawyer says the evidence you provided will make this much easier. How are the kids handling it? They don't know the details yet. Just that Daddy won't be living with us anymore. Sarah keeps asking if it's her fault. Her voice broke slightly. 8 years of marriage, and he threw it away for your wife. I felt a surge of protective anger, not just for myself, but for this woman and her children who'd been collateral damage in Brielle and Zephyr's selfish game. Jennifer, I said, I want you to know that if you need anything, references for lawyers, someone to testify about the timeline, whatever, I'm here. Actually, there's something. My lawyer wants to meet with you tomorrow. She thinks we might be able to coordinate our divorce proceedings. Make sure they can't claim this was just an emotional affair. That evening, my phone rang again. This time was my mother-in-law, Linda. Brielle had clearly gone running to Mommy, but the conversation didn't go the way she'd probably hoped. Clayton, sweetheart, Linda said, Brielle told me you two are having problems. She said you threw her out over some misunderstanding at work. Is that what she called it? She said you were jealous of her success, that you couldn't handle her having male colleagues. I took a deep breath. Linda, I have photos of Brielle and her colleague entering a hotel room together. I have bank records showing she's been spending money on lingerie and expensive dinners that I never saw. I have phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them over the past 3 months. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Oh my God, Linda whispered finally. She's having an affair. Had an affair. It's over now. He got fired, his wife's divorcing him, and Brielle's about to lose everything. I raised her better than this, Linda said, and I could hear tears in her voice. Her father and we taught her about commitment, about loyalty. I don't understand how she became this person. Sometimes people change, I said. Sometimes they show you who they really are. Clayton, I want you to know that whatever happens between you and Brielle, you'll always be family to me. You've been nothing but good to my daughter, and she threw it away. That call meant more to me than I expected. In the span of a week, I'd lost a wife but gained unexpected allies. People who saw through Brielle's lies and stood up for what was right. 3 days after Zephyr lost his job, my phone started ringing at 2 in the morning. Brielle's number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to 30 seconds of sobbing and pleading before deleting it. She called 6 more times that night. I turned off the phone. The next morning, I found her sitting on my studio steps when I arrived for work. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, yesterday's clothes, the kind of desperation that comes when your fantasy world collides with reality. Clayton, please, she said, standing up unsteadily. We need to talk. This has all gotten out of hand. Has it? I unlocked the studio door, not looking at her. Seems pretty straightforward to me. You cheated, got caught, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Zephyr lost everything because of you, she said, following me inside. His job, his family. Was that really necessary? I turned around slowly. Let me get this straight. You're here defending the man you were sleeping with to the husband you betrayed. I'm here because I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But destroying his life won't fix our marriage. Our marriage. I laughed. Brielle, there is no our marriage anymore. You ended that when you decided to play house with another woman's husband. She started crying then, big theatrical sobs that might have worked on me 6 months ago. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But can't we try to work through this? Can't we go to counseling or something? Work through what? The lies? The cheating? The fact that you described in detail how much better he was in bed than me. Her face flushed red. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. No, you said things you've been thinking for months. Maybe years. You showed me exactly what you think of me, of our marriage, of the life we built together. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand. Clayton, I'm begging you. Please don't throw away 7 years over one mistake. I pulled my hand away. One mistake. Brielle, you've been planning this affair for months. The secret phone calls, the new clothes, the mysterious work dinners. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices, all designed to deceive and humiliate me. Okay, fine. You're right. I made terrible choices. But I'm here now, asking for forgiveness. Doesn't that count for something? You know what counts? The fact that you're only here because your boyfriend lost his job and can't support you anymore. You're not sorry you cheated. You're sorry you got caught. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, then seemed to find some inner reserve of venom. You know what your problem is, Clayton? You're weak. You always were. A real man would fight for his marriage instead of running to lawyers and private investigators like some pathetic stalker. A real man knows when something's worth fighting for, I said quietly, and when it's not. Fine, she spat, heading for the door. But when you're sitting alone in this pathetic studio, wondering why you can't keep a woman, remember that you chose this. You chose to be petty and vindictive instead of fighting for love. I chose to have some self-respect, I called after her. Something you might want to try sometime. The door slammed behind her, and I was alone with the echoes of our marriage's final death rattle. The next phase of Brielle's campaign was predictable but effective. If she couldn't guilt me into taking her back, she tried to destroy my reputation instead. It started with social media posts about emotional abuse and controlling behavior. Then came the calls to mutual friends, painting herself as the victim of an unreasonable, paranoid husband. Some people bought it. Jake Morrison, who'd been in our wedding party, called to lecture me about working things out like an adult. Susan Walsh, Brielle's college roommate, left a scathing voicemail about how I was destroying a good woman's life over jealousy. But others saw through it. My business partner Dave cornered me during lunch. Man, I don't know what Brielle's telling people, but Sarah mentioned some crazy story about you stalking her and making up affairs. That doesn't sound like you. It's not, I said. But it's easier for her to rewrite history than admit she blew up our marriage for a guy who was using her. You got proof. I showed him some of the photos my investigator had taken. Dave whistled low. Holy hell. How long was this going on? Months. Maybe longer. And she's trying to make you the bad guy? That takes some serious balls. Word got around quickly after that. The local music scene in Portland is small, and I've been part of it for years. People knew me, trusted me. When they heard the real story, the tide turned. But Brielle wasn't done. Her final gambit was showing up at my studio during a recording session with River's Edge, the folk duo I'd been working with. She burst through the door in the middle of a take, sobbing and pleading. Clayton, please. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. We can move somewhere new. Start over. Just please don't give up on us. The band members looked mortified. I calmly stopped the recording and walked her outside. Brielle, you need to leave. Now. I can't live without you, she wailed. I've lost everything. My job prospects are ruined. Nobody will hire me after what happened with Zephyr. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore. How can you be so cold? I'm the woman you married. I'm the woman you said you'd love forever. No, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You're a stranger who looks like the woman I married. The woman I loved would never have done what you did. She stared at me for a long moment, then seemed to deflate. So this is really it. 7 years, just gone. You made that choice the first time you kissed him. Everything since then has just been cleanup. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I hope you're happy, Clayton. I hope destroying my life was worth your precious pride. My pride. I almost laughed. Brielle, this was never about pride. This was about respect. Self-respect, which you clearly don't understand. She walked away without another word, and I watched her go with a strange sense of finality. The woman I'd married was truly gone, replaced by this bitter, manipulative stranger who blamed everyone but herself for the choices she'd made. Back inside the studio, the band members were packing up their instruments. Sorry about that, I said. Family drama. Mark, the lead guitarist, shook his head. Man, don't apologize. We all heard the stories she's been spreading. What you just did took guts. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, I said. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Agreed Sarah, the vocalist. Takes a real man to walk away from toxic behavior, even when it's coming from someone you love. As they left, I realized something important. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel hurt or betrayed. I felt free. 6 months after the divorce papers were finalized, I ran into Zephyr at a coffee shop downtown. He looked like a broken man, hollow-eyed, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. When he saw me, he actually approached my table. Clayton, he said quietly, can I sit down for a minute? Against my better judgment, I nodded. He settled into the chair across from me, hands wrapped around a paper cup, like it was the only thing keeping him warm. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble. What I did was inexcusable. I destroyed my family, hurt yours, and for what? A few months of feeling important. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, but saw only genuine remorse. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. Because Brielle, she painted this picture of an unhappy marriage, a husband who didn't appreciate her. She made it sound like she was trapped. And you believed her? He laughed bitterly. I wanted to believe her. Made it easier to justify what we were doing. But after everything fell apart, I started seeing the truth. She was never going to leave you for me. I was just entertainment. What do you mean? She's engaged, he said, the words coming out like broken glass. Met some investment banker 3 months ago. Rich guy, expensive car, penthouse apartment. She moved on like our whole affair never happened. The news hit me unexpectedly. Not because I still cared about Brielle, but because it confirmed everything I'd suspected about her character. She wasn't capable of genuine love, only transactions. My kids won't talk to me, Zephyr continued. Jennifer moved them to Seattle. I see them every other weekend if I'm lucky. I lost my career, my family, my self-respect. And for what? A woman who's already forgotten I exist. I'm sorry about your kids, I said, and meant it. They don't deserve to pay for their father's mistakes. He nodded, tears threatening. You know what the worst part is? I could have had a good life. Jennifer was a good wife. My kids were happy. I threw it all away because I was bored and flattered by the attention. We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, he stood up. I know this doesn't change anything, he said. I know sorry doesn't fix what I broke. But I wanted you to know that you handled this with more class than I deserved. A lesser man would have tried to destroy me completely. I didn't need to destroy you, I replied. You did that yourself. After he left, I sat there thinking about the paths we choose and the prices we pay. Zephyr had gambled everything on a woman who saw him as disposable and lost. Meanwhile, I'd chosen self-respect over false reconciliation and won something more valuable than a broken marriage, my integrity. That evening, I got a call from River's Edge. They just signed with a major label and wanted me to produce their first album. Real recognition for my work, a chance to build something lasting. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about the future. A year after my divorce was finalized, I met Sarah at a music industry mixer in Seattle. She was a session violinist, classically trained but drawn to folk and indie rock. We started talking about the challenges of keeping acoustic instruments warm in recording sessions, and 3 hours later, we were still deep in conversation. She had intelligent eyes, calloused fingertips from years of practice, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from mastering something difficult. When she laughed at my stories about temperamental singers and broken equipment, it sounded genuine, not the calculated performance I'd grown used to with Brielle. You're the guy who produced the new River's Edge album, she said when I mentioned my studio. I love the violin arrangements on Mountain Roads. Very tasteful use of reverb. It was the kind of technical compliment that meant more than any superficial flattery. Here was someone who understood my work, who could appreciate the craft behind the art. We started seeing each other casually. Coffee dates, walks through the Pearl District, sessions where she'd come by the studio and add violin tracks to whatever I was working on. No pressure, no drama, just two people enjoying each other's company. Sarah knew about my divorce, but she didn't treat me like damaged goods or try to fix me. She listened when I needed to talk and gave me space when I needed to think. After months of Brielle's emotional manipulation, Sarah's straightforward honesty was like fresh air. 6 months later, she moved in with me. Not because of grand romantic gestures or ultimatums, but because it made sense. We worked well together, both professionally and personally. Meanwhile, Brielle's new life wasn't going as planned. Linda, my former mother-in-law, kept me updated despite my protests. The investment banker had turned out to be married, his divorce proceedings a convenient fiction. When his wife found out about Brielle, she made sure every social circle in Portland knew exactly what kind of woman they were dealing with. Brielle had tried to contact me several times, but I'd blocked her number. According to Linda, she was working at a small marketing firm in Bend, her big city career dreams effectively over. She asks about you sometimes, Linda told me during one of our monthly lunch meetings. Wants to know if you're happy. What do you tell her? That you're building a good life with a good woman. That you dodged a bullet. And it was true. Sarah and I weren't just lovers. We were partners. She understood the creative process, respected my work, and never made me choose between her and my passion for music. When clients came to the studio, She'd often contribute ideas or add live strings to tracks. We were building something together instead of tearing each other down. The final piece of closure came when Jennifer Thorne called to thank me one last time. She'd remarried, a pediatrician from Seattle who treated her kids like his own. Zephyr had managed to get visitation rights back, but he was a shadow of his former self. "You saved my life," Jennifer said. "If you hadn't shown me the truth, I might have spent years wondering what was wrong with me, why my husband was so distant. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. But you gave me the courage to demand better. That's a gift I'll never forget." As I hung up the phone, Sarah walked into the studio carrying 2 cups of coffee and humming a melody she'd been working on. She kissed my cheek and settled into the chair beside my mixing board, ready to start another day of creating something beautiful together. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained something more valuable, a partnership based on honesty, respect, and shared dreams. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having someone show you what you don't want, so you recognize what you do want when it finally arrives.